وجاعل النور من الظلم ومخرج الصبر من الألم وملقي التوبة على الندم فنشكره على المصائب كما نشكره على النعم ونصلي على رسوله الأكرم بالشرف الأشم والنور الأتم والكتاب المحكم وكمال النبيين والخاتم سيد ولد آدم الذي بشر به عيسى بن مريم ودعا لبعثته إبراهيم عليه السلام حين كان يرفع قواعد بيت الله المحرم فصلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى أتباعه خير الأمم الذين بارك الله بهم كافة الناس العرب منهم والعجم فالحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ ولدا ولم يكن له شريك في الملك ولم يكن له ولي من الذل وكبره تكبيرا والحمد لله الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب ولم يجعل له عوجا والحمد لله الذي نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله أرسله الله تعالى بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا فصلى الله عليه وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا ثم أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وإن كل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار يقول سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بعد أن نقول أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ولا تتمنوا ما فضل الله به بعضكم على بعض للرجال نصيب مما اكتسبوا وللنساء نصيب مما اكتسبن واسألوا الله من فضله إن الله كان بكل شيء عليما رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي واللهم ثبتنا عند الموت بلا إله إلا الله اللهم اجعلنا من الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر آمين يا رب العالمين. In today's brief khutbah, I'd like to share some reflections with you from the 32nd ayah of Surah An-Nisa, the 4th surah of the Quran. Many of you may be or may not be familiar, Surah An-Nisa has many great pieces of advice for the Muslim community at the level of the society, but then mostly at the level of a family. Allah gives a lot of family advice to individuals in this beautiful, beautiful surah, especially in the beginning. And right after that beginning, actually, Allah Azza wa Jal dedicates about 60 ayat to the problem of hypocrisy, of nifaq, which is pretty interesting. That first Allah gives the Muslims instructions, and then immediately after He's talking about hypocrites. And the connection between the two of those is those who don't care for Allah's instructions, but still claim to believe in Allah anyway. They take the advice, they listen to the advice, but nothing changes in their life. That is by definition what hypocrisy is, so it needs to be described in detail. So this is one of the most detailed descriptions of nifaq in the entire Quran, Surah An-Nisa. It's really very powerful and very scary. But today I actually want to talk to you about one bit of advice that Allah Azza wa Jal gives in Surah An-Nisa. And it's important to note where it came, because the surah is itself a khutbah from Allah Azza wa Jal. It's a sermon from Allah. And Allah first talks about, one of the biggest sins that you can think of. I mean, you will realize these things are sins whether you're Muslim or not. So Allah Azza wa Jal says, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, la ta'kulu amwalakum baynakum bil batil. Don't consume your monies using corruption, using falsehood. Don't cheat each other out of money. Don't scam people. Don't rob people. Don't make, malicious contracts so you can get more money out of the people, out of your clients and things like that. لا تأكلوا أموالكم بينكم بالباطل. Back in the day, it used to be somebody selling their groceries and giving them less than what they paid for. They paid 10, but you give them worth 8 or something, And you can cheat in the scales and things like that, right? So this is the first problem, which is a pretty big one. وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. Don't kill each other. Don't kill each other. And Allah is mentioning those two things together because economic corruption leads to crime. When you have economic corruption in a society, necessarily what you're going to find next is murder goes up, crimes go up, There's economic disparity because the weak who cannot fight for themselves get taken advantage of, and when they get taken advantage of enough, they turn to becoming outlaws, more and more of them, especially the younger generation. And then you find a situation where the economic problems have now become criminal problems. وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِكُمْ رَحِيمًا وَمَنْ يَفْعَلْ ذَلِكَ عُدْوَانًا وَظُلْمًا, and whoever does this out of animosity and out of the urge to do wrong, فَسَوْفَ نُصْلِيهِ نَارًا, will throw him into the fire. We'll cast him into the fire. وَكَانَ ذَلِكَ عَلَى اللَّهِ يَسِيرًا. And that's easy for Allah to do. إِن تَجْتَنِبُوا كَبَائِرَ مَا تُنْهَوْنَ عَنْهُ. This is very powerful ayah from the Quran. Allah says, if you can stay away from the major sins that you have been forbidden from. I mean, there are all kinds of sins. There are small sins and there are big sins. We do them all the time. But the big ones, Allah talks in this ayah about the big ones. And it says, if you can just stay away from the very big ones, murder, cheating people in business, consuming haram food, zina, these are big sins. These are big problems. You know, shirk, these are big problems. If you can stay away from those, نُكَفِّرْ عَنْكُمْ سَيِّئَاتِكُمْ, there's potential that your other sins can be buried. We can bury them away from you. If you can just address the big problems. You know why this is, and even though this is not my khutbah, I want to just highlight a little bit of this problem. It's called a sense of prioritization. Keeping things in perspective and proportion. When you get a job, and all of you, alhamdulillah, many of you here from break from work, right? You have a project, and it's the priority. It has to get done. You only have 2 weeks to get it done. You only have until tonight to get it done. Whatever it is. It's a priority. And then there are some things that can wait. There are extra things. If you did them, it's nice. If you didn't do them, it's no big deal. And you could do them next month or 2 months from now because it's not a pressing issue. Now you decide that the project that is due tonight, you will ignore. And this might be a good time for you to, Windex your desk. Or maybe, kind of run like antivirus software on your computer. Or maybe you change the artwork in your office. You got a bad sense of priority. You got a big project in front of you. You got to address that first. Similarly, when there's a problem, there are big problems and small problems. If somebody is, robbing the house, somebody enters the house illegally, that's a big problem. That's not a time to vacuum the house. That's a small problem. You understand? You have to have a sense of priority. The same is true of Islam. There are big sins. There are major problems. Consuming, illegitimate income is a major problem. And then there are refinements in Islam. You want to perfect your prayer. You want to take more time in getting your wudu right. You want to say salam properly. You want to work on your tajweed. These are good things. These are wonderful things, but they're refinements. They make you a better and better Muslim. But here you are consuming all the haram in the world, and yet you're worried about, the length of your beard or something. There's a problem with that. It's not a joke. Even the beard is a sunnah of the Messenger, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It's not something small. But in comparison to major things, if you can violate the major things, then this is a problem. Now what some people do is they manipulate this. And they say, well, at least I'm not doing big things, so I don't have to worry about anything little. At least I'm not killing anyone. At least I'm not robbing anyone, so I should be okay. Well, then you decide what's important and what's not important. And you've taken Allah and the book and the sunnah, and the Prophet ﷺ out of the picture. Well, who decides what you will live by? We call this guidance for a reason. Just because some things are top priority, and then lesser priority, and then lesser priority, the prioritization, doesn't mean that they're unimportant. It means if you've taken care of this, now you must worry about the next thing. If you've taken care of that, then you worry about the next thing. There's no such thing as don't worry about it. There's no such thing. You keep moving on. You keep progressing. But now the ayah that I really wanted to talk to you about, which is at the root of this problem. Allah Azza wa Jalla in the ayah right before talked about major sins, kaba'ir. We call them al-kaba'ir. It's not a small thing. And in the very next ayah he mentions, you can call it the seed of major sins. You don't see a seed. It seeds under the ground. All you see is the plant that comes out, or the weed that comes out. But you don't see that seed, it's deep inside. And Allah mentions the seed inside, He says, وَلَا تَتَمَنَّوْا مَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بِهِ بَعْضَكُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. It's an incredible ayah. Don't wish for, I'm going to do a crude, rough translation first, then I'll discuss a few things from this ayah with you. Don't wish for things that Allah has given some preference with over others. Don't wish for what your brother has. Don't wish for what your boss has. Don't wish for what your neighbor has. Don't wish for what your sister has, what your younger brother has, or what your older brother has. What your friend has. Don't wish for what Allah has given other people is not what you want. Allah says that this is actually one of the root problems in life. When we are never happy with what we have and what we're going to earn and what we like to do, but we define even what we want based on what others have. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't like things. It's okay for you to like a nice car. It's okay for you to like a nice house, nice clothes. These are all natural things. Allah Azza wa Jalla put the love of these things in us. It's mentioned in the Quran. But when you become disturbed, how do you know if you're disturbed? The only time you like something is someone else has it. That's when you like it. It's not because you like it. It's because, what do they have and I don't have? How come he gets to? How come she gets to? And this begins, interestingly enough, at home. It doesn't happen when you're older and you reach a certain point, and a lot of countries, for example, Muslim countries nowadays are known, subhanAllah, they're known for their corruption, right? So the guy, whether he's working at the post office, or he's a police officer, or he's stamping passports at the airport, they're known for corruption. Why? Why do they want bribes? Why do they want extra money, these people? Well, they see the guy that's their supervisor has got a huge house. He parks in a nice car in the parking lot. And they say, why can't I have those things? How did he get there? Well, he used this road. I can use that road too. You can play that game. Because you want what somebody else has. You want what somebody else has. And I'm arguing today that it begins inside the house and it begins in childhood when parents don't address sibling rivalry. Sibling rivalry means brother is jealous of brother, sister is jealous of sister, some kids are jealous of other kids, kids are always fighting with each other, right? And some people have, a lot of parents in the audience today have that problem. Our children fight a lot. And that doesn't mean our children are evil people. And by the way, sibling rivalry is something natural. It does happen. There's a natural desire inside children to want what the other has. That's fine. But you cannot submit yourself to it and say, well, that's just how my kids are. I tried yelling at them. I tried punishing them. I tried saying, hey, you have to love your brother. And he says, fine. No. You don't give up on it. We have some responsibility ourselves in this also. So there are a couple of recognitions here that I wanted to highlight. The first of them is sibling rivalry is such a powerful evil that if it's not managed, if that tendency is not managed, it can destroy lives. There are two instances in the Quran. Two stories in the Quran where because of sibling rivalry, great evil occurred. The first murder in human history is because a brother is jealous of a brother. It's because of sibling rivalry. The first major kabira. Remember Allah said, stay away from the major sins. And the first major sin in Islam, in history, on the earth, the one that took place on the earth, is the story of Qabil killing Habil. That Allah Azza wa Jalla talks about in Surah Al-Ma'idah. That's a huge problem. Can you imagine every murder thereafter is a byproduct? Every murder is a byproduct of that legacy. And then the other case you find is of Yusuf alayhi salam, where his brothers are just absolutely enraged by the fact that dad loves him. He's not causing them any harm. Yusuf alayhi salam is not hurting his brothers. He's not taking food from their plate and eating it himself. He's not moving the mattress from their bed and taking it all for himself. There's nothing that Yusuf alayhi salam does that takes away from their life, but they still hate him. Why? Because that's what jealousy does. Jealousy is not that somebody's causing you harm. That's not where rivalry comes from. It's not because somebody caused you harm. It's because when you have failure yourself, then you say, my failure must be the result of that one. Because dad loves him more. Because mom likes her better. Because she's taller, she gets everything. The girl says about her sister. Because he's smarter, he thinks he's so smart. He gets all the hundreds on the math test. I always have to fail the math test. It's because of him that I look bad. And these rivalries develop. These anger develops. We as parents, early on, we have to try to address this problem. We have to address this problem. Because if it's not addressed, it's not going to be limited to siblings. Then it's going to be, you don't like good coming to anybody else. You don't like that good comes to anyone else. And it bothers you. Even though it doesn't hurt you at all. But you find pleasure in other people being harmed. You find pleasure in other people being, seeing a bad day. Or losing their job or things like, yeah, they deserve it. Yeah. And this sick mentality has so pervaded the Muslim community, subhanAllah, that whenever we see somebody coming up, somebody's business is going well, somebody's career is going well, then they're like, oh yeah, he's going to learn his lesson when he loses his job. We're almost wishing that they fall apart, so we can have something to say. This is a sick mentality. It's the exact opposite of what successful societies do, by the way. In successful societies, People are failure. People try things and they fail. But the people around them, their family, their community, they support them and say, try again, try again, try again. And they keep trying until they become a success. In many parts of the Muslim community, somebody becomes a success and we criticize them and criticize them and criticize them and say horrible things about them until they become a failure. We will not stop. And once they become a failure, we're happy. Now we're okay. We can leave them alone. SubhanAllah. This all begins with وَلَا تَتَمَنَّوْا مَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بِهِ بَعْضَكُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. By the way, tamanni in Arabic means to wish for something. أَحَبَّ أَنْ يَصِلَ إِلَيْهِ فُلَانٍ. I mean, if you want something to come to him, that's what they say for tamanna. And also say قَدَّرَهُ. They say planning for something. Tamanna, planning for something. Don't make your long-term plans based on somebody else's dreams. Don't say, I should do this because they did this. Allah said you were made individuals. You don't have to follow somebody else's path. Not somebody else's career, not somebody else's financial goals, not somebody else's educational goals. And parents should understand that. Not all your children are the same. The idea that in Islam, all of our children have to be treated equally doesn't make sense. It's actually not true. Our children have to be treated fairly, but not equally. A baby needs more time. It just needs more time. Your 10-year-old needs less time than a baby. A baby's a full-time job. It wakes up every 2-3 hours. You have to take care of it. But you know what's going to happen when you do that? The 9-year-old was getting all your attention. All of a sudden, all your time is with the baby. And he's like, what is this little thing over here? It's like, took away all my... I can't ask for anything anymore. I'm not the center of attention anymore. I hate that little thing. And then you find yourself, sometimes the kid's like scratching in and like pushing in. And what are you doing to the baby? And he's like, oh, now you hate me too on top of that? First it was you don't love me anymore. Now you're angry at me too, friend? You know? And then these things develop. These things foster. We have to address these things. Parents have to be a little smarter about how to handle those kinds of situations. And if they are in your home and they're fighting with each other, these are matters to be taken care of. And I'll just give you 1 or 2 tips in these 5 minutes that I have, inshallah ta'ala, that I try to adopt with my children. Because it's not like my kids are above sibling rivalry. They have it too. The girls fight with each other. The boys fight with each other. The girls fight with the boys. The boys make fun of the girls. The girls make fun of the boys. Right? One of the first things you can do as a family, and this is really important, is you can sit together as a family. And there's no distractions, there's no devices, there's no toys. Everybody's sitting together, maybe on the floor, maybe at the dinner table. And you say, you know what? Kareem just came and told me nobody loves him. Everybody hates him. And you go around asking, do you hate him? Do you hate him? Do you hate him? Do you hate him? And you ask. And even though this is a time, not to yell at anyone, but you know, every child, innate, they have a good conscience. They have good conscience. But it has to be brought out in a way that you're not aggravating them. You know? And they'll say, no, I don't hate him. I don't hate him. No. Do we love Kareem? Do we love our brother? And you ask around. Even just saying it for a child will change their attitude, even if for a day. You'll see a change. You'll see a change. Why? Because it's been addressed. Something's been addressed. Parents going around saying, I cannot give all of you equal time. I may not be able to give all of you equal attention, but I love all of you equally. All of you are important to me. I don't want to be mad at any of you. You know, sometimes it's easy to get mad at the child who did the wrong thing. And the child was the victim. And a lot of times in many families, there's one permanent victim and there's one permanent criminal. Right? If you see anybody crying, you know that one did it. That's it. You don't have to do the investigation or look up the video footage. You already know who did this and what they did, because they always do it. Don't do that as a parent. Don't judge. Because when your children start thinking that you always judge them, and you don't even have to know what happened, and you already know, and you punish them without finding out, then they stop trusting you, because you stop trusting them. When you stop trusting your children, they stop trusting you. They stop telling you things. They feel like you're not going to listen anyway. And when that happens, then, even if they haven't moved out of your house, even they still live in that same house, their hearts have moved out. That's a more dangerous thing. We cannot afford that in this society. There are plenty of other things calling to their hearts. You cannot alienate the hearts of your children. You know, we can't afford to do that. Don't yell at your kids. Especially don't yell at them in front of their other siblings. Don't yell at the older one in front of the younger ones. It humiliates them. And the other ones, even if they're not laughing at her, she's feeling or he's feeling like they're all laughing at me. They're looking at me. I'm getting punished in front of them. This takes it takes self-esteem away from a child. And when you take self-esteem away from a child, then they only want what other people have. They don't have the self anymore.
Their self is worthless, so they look for validation other places. Then this ayah gets fulfilled. وَلَا تَتَمَنَّوْا مَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بِهِ بَعْضَكُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ لِلرِّجَالِ نَصِيبٌ مِّمَّا اكْتَسَبُوا وَلِلنِّسَاءِ نَصِيبٌ مِّمَّا اكْتَسَبْنَا. Men will have whatever they earn. Women will have whatever they earn. Allah says even between men and women, they're made differently. And Allah will give everybody what they work hard towards. And everybody's attempts are different. They're qualitative, they're relative. We have to appreciate that about our children. Some of your kids are going to be inclined towards the arts. And some of your kids are going to be very mathematical. And some of your kids are really good readers. And some of your kids are very good at physical activity. They're different, they're good at different things. Don't judge them all the same way. The best psychiatrist for your children is you. You know them since they were born. You know? And even these few simple things that I'm referring to, I cannot possibly go into detail, and I want to have, inshallah ta'ala, in tomorrow's seminar, I want to have detailed discussions about these problems in parenting. And kind of take advice from Allah's book. What does Allah have to tell us about how we can raise our children better? What things can we look out for? That eventually down the road become just terrible, terrible problems. And I'll tell you what those terrible problems look like before I let you go. More and more I'm noticing that for young people, the only thing that makes them feel like they're worth something is the brand of clothes that they're wearing. Or the logo on the phone. Or the kind of car. If they're old enough, the kind of car. That's it. That's it. Like their worthiness of themselves, how they evaluate themselves, is basically whether or not they're wearing a particular brand of clothes and how much they paid for it. You know? That's it. Nothing else. And it's such a sad, sad, sad reality. Because Allah Azza wa Jal created us such an honored creature, and now the only thing you find dignity in yourself with is some abstract name whose only purpose is to make more money, so it makes the name seem prestigious. It has no prestige in it. But you all of a sudden have respect because you're wearing a brand name shirt. Or you're wearing really expensive sneakers or something. Now you're worth something. Take the sneakers away because it's just material. It's just cotton and rubber and leather. That's all that is. Take the shirt away, it's just cotton. What's left? What are you worth? What are you worth? You know? Because we're not going to take those brands into our graves. We're not going to be standing in front of Allah saying, Ya Allah, you need to give me special treatment because I'm a Tommy Hilfiger type of guy. I don't go below our money. So when you hook me up, it's not going to be like that. It's not going to be like that. We're going to be standing in front of Allah, and the only thing we will have to present for ourselves is what we earned. What we did in this life. What good did we do in this life? That is where our worth comes from. Don't let your worth be dictated by others. Don't compare yourself to other people. Compare yourself. If you want to compare, that's my last advice today. If you want to compare yourself, and you have low self-esteem if you had it for a while. If you only want to compare yourself to your own self from last week, from last year, from yesterday. Compare yourself to that. Did I have a better Ramadan this year than last year? No, then my failures, my worst self beat me. I got to defeat myself. I have to conquer myself. You don't have to conquer anybody else. You don't. You're not in competition with anyone else. The only one you're fighting with is yourself. The only one you have to conquer is yourself. That's it. When you realize that, when I realize that, wallahi, we will not be so obsessed with the newest gadgets and the newest clothes and the newest this and the shiniest that and the most impressive this or the other. We will not be. We will be happy. We will still like nice things, but they will not define us. They will not be the only aspiration we have in life. They're just things that come. Allah made this world beautiful, and He told us He made it beautiful. وَجَعَلْنَا لَكُمْ فِيهَا مَعَايِشْ. He put means of luxury in this world for you. He said that to us Himself. Fine, but they will not be the reason we live. They will not be the only thing you think about. The only thing before you go to sleep, let me look at the NSX video that's coming out, the new Acura that's coming out. Oh my God, I can't wait. One day. You won't be like that anymore. I pray that we're able to instill self-confidence and self-esteem into our children. I pray that we're able to become a people that do not live wishing for what other people have, that we can be happy with what Allah has given us, and that Allah Azza wa Jal raises us on Judgment Day as people who come to Him with a good heart and with good deeds earned that are worth earning His forgiveness and His unlimited rewards and unlimited gifts in the Akhirah. I pray also that Allah Azza wa Jalla empowers our parents to be patient with their children, to not yell at the home so much, to be able to develop a trusting, loving relationship with their children, to be able to set discipline and lines where they need to be set without being oppressive, while being patient at the same time, to be able to give a love of this deen, a love of this book, a love of this Prophet ﷺ into their children, to be able to pass that along to them, and to be able to raise our children in a way that they can carry themselves on their own without our supervision as good Muslims. If we can do that with our kids, if we can make them independent, confident Muslims, and they're raised with values of Islam, and they can hold up to them even whether we're watching or not, then we have succeeded. May Allah Azza wa Jalla grant us that success, and may Allah Azza wa Jalla help our children, that many of them are being bullied in school, that are being made fun of because they're Muslim, that are being pressured to do all kinds of haram things by their friends, and they're even afraid to tell their parents because they don't know what might happen. May Allah give them courage and steadfastness and make their trials easy. May Allah make them strong enough that they can speak out about the problems that they're facing. May Allah Azza wa Jalla, and I finally ask, may Allah Azza wa Jalla, make our masajid a place where our children can be comfortable and they can speak about the problems that they're having to people that can actually help them. And may Allah Azza wa Jalla make our masajid a place where the ummah unites and their hearts come closer together and not further apart. Barakallahu li wa lakum fil Qur'an al-Hakim wa nafa'ani wa iyyakum bil ayati wa dhikr al-Hakim. Alhamdulillahi wa kafa.